Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
Sensible, yeah.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news that never refused to use. No doubt continues now. This, my fellow Americans, is the broadcast for, wow, it's already August the 18th in the year of our Lord 2025. Hour 2 of 2, promoting God, family, country, protecting life, liberty, and property. We want to reject revolution unless it's a Jesus revolution. Then we follow the Prince of Peace. We want restoration of the greatest country on the face of the earth, is what we really want. Lowell Nelson with me, campaignforliberty.org. Welcome back, sir.
Great to be back, Sam. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome indeed, sir. Newsflash, governments lie, says Ron Paul. Lowell. I find it funny because it's so blatant, so true, so concerning, so obvious, but yet newsflash, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, he's saying that tongue-in-cheek, obviously.
Of course he is.
It's not a newsflash.
But I think it's funny.
It is. It's really not any surprise to those of us who are familiar with government.
People are like, you think?
Understatement of the year there.
At the same time, his pros, though, are really critical.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and his concrete examples of how the government lies are really, really good, too. His column does it all here, posted at campaignforliberty.org. He wrote this column on the heels of an action that President Trump took. President Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS, right, whose name was Dr. Erica McIntyre. Okay, so Trump said he fired her because she manipulated jobs data. She's only doing what's been done before, folks. Quote, manipulations, he stated, include the updated May and June BLS numbers showing the U.S. economy created 258,000 fewer jobs than originally reported, as well as the weaker than expected July jobs report. All of this, the president suggested, was designed to make him look bad, end of quote. Well, of course, we all know Trump does not like to look bad. I mean, that's for sure. Big ego, just like most other politicians.
But I want to say something here, too. I agree that the numbers are manipulated. I agree with President Trump on that reality check. However, I don't know that I could beat this person up. And let me explain why. I don't think they literally manipulated the numbers way worse under Trump. I think they've been doing this for a long time. And so I'm not defending this clown that does this. But what I am saying is, you know, she might just be like, hey, what we're doing is we're doing what they've always done. This is the way they, you know, have defined the way we track this and da-da-da-da-da. It may be wrong. It may be dishonest. It may be disingenuous. But it might also be kind of the way that it's been done. And, you know, you can debate how numbers should be tracked. We can get into that. But I think that's the critical discussion point here, right?
And for sure. In fact, Ron Paul mentions a gentleman named Williams, John Williams, I believe. Yeah, John Williams, who publishes a website called shadowstats.com. And he said, look at the real numbers. If you really want to know what the CPI is and what true inflation is, then go look at shadowstats.com. And you know, it would be nice if this Erica McIntyre had, you know, referred to that website and said, look, we need to get our numbers really correct here. I mean, that would have been a bold thing for her to do, but it would have been the right thing for her to do. She could have exposed the fact that data has been manipulated by previous administrations over and over and over, but she didn't do that, and so, you know, Trump fired her, and, you know, that's neither here nor there, I guess, but you have to ask yourself, why would the government manipulate these statistics, right? Well, there's a monetary reason they do this. Ron Paul explains this.
And this is where I disagree with Trump in that it's not always about you, Donald. I know you think it is. And I agree that the attacks are on you, making you look bad. I don't disagree with the fact that you're drawing. But it isn't about you. Just take labor, for example. If somebody is looking for a job and then they decide they're not going to look for a job anymore because they can't get one, so they give up, they're not part of the unemployed anymore. Well, that's strange. If you're a part-time worker and not a full-time worker, but you can only get a part-time job, you can't get a full-time job or whatever else, then you're considered gainfully fully employed, which isn't true. And so we have all these manipulations, but it's about making the economy look good. It's about deception, putting the government in a favorable stance. It isn't really about the Donald.
Right. And why does the government want to be viewed favorably here? Well, it's because it would impact the value of U.S. Treasuries, right? The value of a Treasury is based on the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, which is issued by the Department of Labor. So if investors, the people who buy U.S. Treasuries, if the investors don't trust the CPI, right, if they think it's manipulated or twisted or whatever, then they are not going to have as much confidence in in buying the U.S. Treasuries. And so they're going to demand higher returns, which of course increases the interest payments the government has to make when they pay those U.S. Treasuries. And so that's why the Bureau wants to keep the CPI low. That's why they misstate it. That's why they fudge the numbers so that the U.S. Treasuries, continue to work, for the government, so the government doesn't have to pay such high interest payments.
And then they want to protect the banking cartel, because what they want to do is keep inflation low so that it continues to erode the taxpayers' wealth. It's hidden taxation, it's robbery, but they want to keep it low so that you don't really notice the destruction. Notice the fly in the ointment, if you will. They don't want you to, and so if they keep it low, then it's kind of off the radar. If it spikes and gets out of control, people are like, hey, wait a minute. And then pretty soon, discussions about honest money become more real. I think Ron Paul is absolutely spot on this. I think it's important to understand John Williams. He does have shadowstats.com. I've been familiar with this website for quite some time. He's right about that. There's other things that increase or change the game about the employment numbers too, Lowell.
That's right. They have what they call chained CPI, chain like in a logging chain, chained CPI, which means that even if price inflation has made steak unaffordable for most Americans, the government does not consider their standard of living lowered if they can buy a substitute for steak, such as hamburger.
or right? Bologna, for crying out loud.
Or spam, right.
You go from steak to spam, and no change to the government about our financial wherewithal or about our ability to buy and purchase, and all that relates to all kinds of other numbers, right?
Yeah, it really does. And John Williams there at shadowstats.com, he believes that the real inflation is more like about 12%, right? And so as opposed to what the government says it is, like 2 or 3%, the real rate of inflation is more like 12%. He also says that the unemployment numbers are closer to 20%. If they actually, considered someone who was out of work and then quit looking for work as unemployed, and if they considered those who are working part-time because they can't find a full-time job as unemployed, then the unemployment rate would be almost 20%, Sam, and, inflation rate of 12%. So those numbers, the more accurate number is pretty astonishing. And we have a lot more people.
Let's say that you forced me back into the office now, too, and I'm used to working from home, and I feel like for my family I need to work from home. They forced me into the office, so I quit. Well, you're not really unemployed then either, are you?
No, you're not.
Because you quit unless you're actively looking for a full-time job and on unemployment benefits or whatever. You're not considered unemployed.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So Ron Paul hits the nail on the head, like Sam says here. He quote, manipulating the inflation figures to understate the true amount of inflation also lowers the cost of living increases the government must provide for veterans, beneficiaries of Social Security, and others. This provides a way for government to cut spending without Congress members having politically difficult votes. End of quote. You see how the government just wiggles and worms and manipulates their way out of having to make tough decisions without being fully transparent to the people? It's astonishing what the lengths to which they go to make government look good so that their people do not take the heat from the citizenry, Sam. It's amazing.
Well, the good news is that we're calling a spade a spade. The good news is Americans are learning about the truth and waking up. The good news is John Williams is doing a phenomenal job as publisher of the website shadowstats.com. And what I want to do is basically change this discussion to an assault on Donald, which I agree that it is, but it's an assault on we the people more than Donald, which is this manipulation of all these numbers and the government rolling out all this data. Then what happens is if somebody doesn't want to roll out the data, what they usually do is they say, oh, now the government won't release the numbers, as if the government's hiding something. The government has no business creating these numbers in the first place, Lowell.
You're right. Right as rain, Sam.
Go read your Constitution, people. Anyway, enough of that topic. Great on Ron Paul. Great article. Newsflash, governments lie. My response, you think?
Are you ready to stand up for your community and support your local sheriff? Join the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association and become a vital member of the Sheriff's Citizens Posse. At cspoa.org, we empower citizens like you through weekly webinars, arming you with the knowledge to back your constitutional county sheriff. Together, we can uphold our Constitution and ensure liberty and justice for all. Your community needs you now more than ever.
This is a battle between truth and deceit. A battle between forces that would enslave this country in darkness and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in fact.
TheEpochTimes.com.
What do you wish your parents would do to show you they love you? Take me to Montana, that I would have a huge slumber party with all the girls there. Play with me more often. My mom's so busy with the board meeting.
To spend more time together as a family.
Do more out-of-the-house activities.
This is a tough one.
My parents, they do everything. They love me. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have a roof over my head.
They don't need to show it to me. I just know they love me.
Well, not yelling at me very much. What do you wish? What do you wish?
Raise my allowance.
To not argue together.
Have my dad be home more for dinner and stuff so that I could be even closer.
Family, isn't it about time?
Buy me an ice cream and kiss me to love me.
From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay, what's the next question?
Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Good to be with you here on Liberty RoundTable Live. My name is Lowell Nelson, and I'm riding shotgun this morning with your host, Sam Bushman. Next up is this column by Andrew Napolitano regarding the right to be left alone. You know, Judge Andrew Napolitano talks a lot about this right. He writes a lot about it. He talks a lot about it. Obviously, it's one of our most important rights. Well, this time, this column that was posted at ronpaulinstitute.org just last week, just a few days ago, he does it in the style of Ron Paul's famous what-if speech of 2009. He doesn't make a single declarative statement. He only asks these what-if questions. And yet, it's still a very educational column, just like Ron Paul's speech. His what-if speech was absolutely educational, even without making a declarative statement. And this reminds me of something that of a poster that I had on my wall growing up. You know, the middle school, high school time of my life. I had a poster, and it was a photo of the Grand Canyon. I mean, one of these big posters, like 3 foot by 4 feet or something, and beautiful photo of the Grand Canyon with a caption that said, "Quote, to wonder is to begin to understand." End quote. Right? I mean, when you look at the Grand Canyon and you begin to wonder, how in the world did that thing get created? Well, then you begin to understand how it got created because you begin to think, right? And thinking opens the door to understanding. Well, Judge Knapp's questions make us wonder about our government and about our awful situation, our current situation, which is increasingly awful, and thus we begin to understand our situation more fully. He begins this way. Quote, what if the federal government captures in real time the contents of every telephone call, email, and text message, and all the fiber optic data generated by every person and entity in the United States 24/7. What if this mass surveillance was never authorized by any federal law and tramples the Fourth Amendment? End of quote. Great questions. I mean, with these first two questions, Judge Knapp describes our current situation really accurately, quite accurately. And this has been going on not just for a few years, folks, but for a couple of decades at least, right? He asks, quote, what if this mass surveillance has come about by the secret collusion of presidents and their spies in the National Security Agency, the NSA, and by the federal government forcing the major telephone and computer service providers to cooperate with it? What if the service providers were coerced into giving the feds continuous physical access to their computers and thus to all the data contained in and passing through those computers? What if President George W. Bush told the NSA they could spy on anyone? What if Bush believed they were not constrained by the laws against computer hacking or even by the Constitution? What if Presidents Obama, Biden, and Trump have taken the same position toward the NSA and ordered or permitted the same warrantless and lawless spying? End of quote. And then Judge Knapp's question gets at the heart of the matter. Quote, what if the Constitution requires warrants based on probable cause of criminal behavior before surveillance can be conducted, but Congress has written laws reducing that standard to probable cause of communicating with a foreign national? What if a basic principle of constitutional law is that Congress is subject to the Constitution and therefore cannot change its terms or their meanings? End quote. Well, Sam, I've described this cartoon image before, but I like it so much I've got to describe it again. This meme, right, this image, you see the Constitution on parchment before you, there on the table, and above the Constitution, above this parchment, is a rubber stamp clutched in someone's hand, lifting the stamp up from the parchment and leaving behind the words, void where prohibited by law. That's the meme. That's the image I have in my brain, and I've just described it to you. Void where prohibited by law, right? So basically Congress passes a law, and which they have no authority to do, but they amend the Constitution by passing that law, right? That's what I mean. That's what this image means. And they've done this dozens and dozens of times, folks. They have amended the Constitution numerous times by enacting the law, and that's simply not right. But that is what we have done. That's our situation today. Now, Judge Knapp continues, quote, what if the Constitution requires that all warrants particularly describe the place to be searched or the person or thing to be seized? What if the NSA warrants do not particularly describe the place to be searched or the person or thing to be seized, but rather authorize the bearer to search indiscriminately through service providers' customer data? What if we in America are the most watched, photographed, and copied society in history? What if we never agreed to this? What if instead we have a Constitution that was written in large measure to prevent this? And what if the purpose of the probable cause requirement and the specificity of warrants requirement was to protect the individual right to be left alone? What if the government cannot morally, constitutionally, or legally interfere with inalienable rights without a jury trial? End quote. And by the way, I understand, Sam, that about 97% of federal cases end in a plea bargain, and therefore jury trials are increasingly rare.
And the reason that they end up in plea bargains and that it's so rare to have a jury, and a jury is what the Founding Fathers basically expected as the standard. I mean, it was the gold standard of honesty and integrity and due process. The reason they've jettisoned that right now, though, is because what happens is the federal government makes everything a federal crime, and they should be state crimes, not federal crimes in the first place, most of them. Secondarily, though, what they do is they threaten the heck out of you. Sam, if you plea and cop and do this and that, and you actually might survive this thing, buddy. Otherwise, it's going to be curtains for you. And based on that threat tactic, that dishonest, then at some point, rather than treating the crime as, hey, whatever the crime is, there's the penalty for this crime, it's more like, we're going to throw you away forever, buddy. I mean, I'm just telling you right now, lock you up and swallow the key, because you're not going anywhere forever. And based on that, and how do I know all this? Because I had dear friends, Ammon Bundy, Pete Santilli, many others, Stuart Rhodes, have gone to prison, and that's what they're told. Hey, if you do this and this and this, and I've even had friends say, I have no choice. I've got to agree to this. Otherwise, my life is just absolutely ruined. And so that again is witness tampering. That again is manipulation. We should say, hey, here's the penalty. Here's the crime. The crime needs to be realistic to the penalty, but we shouldn't be accepting or tolerating these threats. It shows that the judges, that the prosecution is really in bed with manipulation to unfairly trick, deceive, force people into accepting agreements to where, hey, they know if it goes to a jury, they're going to lose. But who wants to gamble with the jury? Because you never know what the jury's going to be told either, right? And so, anyway, all I'm telling you is that's the reason that we're at this stage, Lowell.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we must understand what a plea bargain really is, by the way. A plea bargain is basically if you're the defendant, if you're the one accused of a crime, maybe say the crime of fraud. Okay, you're accused of the crime of fraud, but and so the penalty for that might be 20 years in the federal prison. Okay, and so a plea bargain is basically the prosecutor says, look, if you will plead to a lesser charge, then we'll just throw you in jail for maybe 5 years instead of 20, but in order to accept the deal, you have to agree that you committed this misdemeanor crime. You didn't commit fraud; you committed this other misdemeanor. In other words, you have to lie to accept the bargain, and so part of the bargain is you agreeing to lie to the judge, saying that, yeah, I committed this misdemeanor, and therefore I am guilty of, and you can throw me in the prison for 5 years, right? And so on its face, Sam, a plea bargain is absolutely wrong, because you shouldn't, agree to lie in the first place, and yet people are willing to do that over and over because they don't want to be in prison for 20 years when they have the possibility of being in prison just for 5 years. It's a horrible situation to be in, because if you choose not to lie, then you risk 20 years in prison. If you choose to lie, then of course it's a done deal. You're in prison for only 5 years. Pretty sad situation.
Well, there you have it. The what ifs continue, and I think that the sad part about these what ifs is every one of them is a reality. Every one of them is a truth-telling statement, not really a question. And that's the brilliance of what Ron Paul did back in the day and what Judge Napolitano is doing right now, Lowell.
Yeah, and so he concludes with this question, quote, what if, because of weakness or fear or secrecy or lethargy or slick argument, we have a new normal in the United States in which every person's inalienable right to be left alone is violated by the federal government so thoroughly, quietly, and continuously that we don't even notice it. End quote. Sam?
Sad reality checks, ladies and gentlemen. They tell you that we're anti-government. Just so you know, government's lying. Those who claim that lie. We reject unconstitutional, immoral government like what we're talking about now. That's true. But we stand for and promote the proper role of limited constitutional government based on the fact that we're a constitutional representative republic under God Almighty. That's where we really stand, ladies and gentlemen. CampaignForLiberty.org. Lowell Nelson continues in seconds. You're listening to the hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use style. Liberty Roundtable Live.
Pursuing liberty, using the Constitution as our guide. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. I'm Rich Thomason. Church leaders and parents' rights groups throughout California gearing up for a massive effort tomorrow aimed at derailing State Assembly Bill 495. It's being called a child trafficker's dream because it allows strangers to remove children from public schools or daycare centers without their parents' permission. Karen England is president of the Capital Resource Institute in California. She says every parent in America should be concerned.
Well, on the 19th, we're having a big rally, press conference, and lobby day where we're hoping thousands of citizens come and send them out to lobby the senators to oppose this bill. This bill has been flying under the radar, and so we need to stop this bill because it goes to the Senate floor, and if it passes, it goes straight to the Governor Gavin Newsom. So we have to stop it on the 19th.
More information on AB 495 can be found on the website realimpact.us. On the heels of Friday's meeting with Russia's Vladimir Putin in Alaska, today President Trump meets with Ukrainian President Zelensky, European and NATO leaders at the White House. The outer bands of Hurricane Erin have been lashing Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands with heavy surf, flooding rains, high winds. North Carolina's Outer Banks anticipate similar conditions in just a few days as Erin passes by offshore.
Locals here are really hardy, and they're used to this kind of thing. It's so beautiful outside. It's hard for people to feel like there's a hurricane coming when it's as gorgeous as it is outside.
Angela Taws, co-owner of a supermarket in Buxton on the Outer Banks. Some folks are clearing out, others, though, battening down the hatches, preparing to ride this one out. Watching Wall Street this hour, the Dow trading 11 points higher, the NASDAQ 30 points lower, and the S&P is off 3. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, the timeshare cancellation guy. In 2011, I founded Wesley Financial Group with one goal in mind, to help honest folks out of their timeshares permanently. Today, I run Wesley with my two sons, a real family business, treating every client and every employee like we'd want our own family treated. That philosophy has helped us grow into the largest, most trusted timeshare cancellation company in the United States. Fortune magazine even recognized us as one of the best places to work. Why? Because we genuinely care. In fact, some of our former clients were so moved by their experience working with us, they joined our team so they could help others to timeshare freedom. If you're stuck in a timeshare, give us a call. Let our family help your family.
Call Wesley now for your free timeshare exit kit. 800-226-5454. That's 800-226-5454. 800-226-5454.
Cybercrime is exploding. Take Sarah from Sweet Delights, whose world crumbled after having to close with not being able to bounce back. Small businesses are prime targets, but the right strategies can keep yours safe. Jay Hill, CEO of Network Providers, has co-authored The Cyber Playbook Simplifies Cybersecurity for Business Owners with Strategies to avoid costly breaches and fines. Build a strong cyber attack response. Secure your business with key protections. Cyber threats aren't slowing down, but you can stay ahead. Protect your business. Ensure its security for tomorrow. Get the Cyber Playbook today at networkprovidersinc.com/cyber-playbook or call 385-446-5500 now.
Looking for an IT partner that truly understands your needs? Managed IT Services is the answer. We meet with you regularly to discuss your goals and form a tailored technology plan. Our customers have called us a trusted advisor who delivers. When it comes to IT, we do it all. Firewalls, cloud storage, server migration, and more. Say goodbye to long-term contracts and hello to a team that earns your business month after month. Call 801-706-6980 now and let Managed IT Services transform your IT experience.
Have you ever had great honey? No, I mean really good, all-natural, raw honey? Well, now you can, thanks to localhoneyman.com. We can ship out our locally made honey all across the U.S. So don't worry, you won't miss out. Plus, Local Honeyman has so many different flavors, like Utah Wildflower, High Desert Delight, Happy Valley, and Blackberry, just to name a few. So purchase your delicious raw honey today at localhoneyman.com.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So glad you're with us this morning. This is Liberty RoundTable Live, and my name is Lowell Nelson. I'm riding shotgun with your host, Sam Bushman. We've just been talking about this awesome column by Judge Andrew Napolitano. And we got into the importance of jury trials and the view of the founders that jury trials would be this palladium of liberty, protecting the people and their rights, from government, for an overreaching government that would take from you your liberties, right? And so I just want to mention one of the most powerful essays, one of the most persuasive and influential essays I've ever read on jury is an essay written by Lysander Spooner in the 1850s entitled Trial by Jury. It's a very simple title, just 3 words, Trial by Jury, but it's a small treatise. You can read it in less than maybe an hour, maybe a couple of hours, depending on how fast you read. But that essay, that treatise, is absolutely essential reading for all patriots, for all liberty-minded people, where, old and small, no matter where you live in the country, make that as part of your library. In fact, read it every year because it is well worth reading, reminding ourselves of the principle of trial by jury. It truly is a palladium of liberty, and if we had more people, more citizens who understood the principles of a jury trial, both of a petite jury and a grand jury, then we would have more liberty in this country than we'd know what to do with. I mean, it'd be absolutely heaven if we truly understood the power of juries right here in our own country. So we need to, brush up on this. Not only get a copy for yourself, but spread it to your friends and family. Make sure they know the power of a jury and the appropriate, one of the things that Lysander Spooner talks about, of course, is that the jury is responsible to judge the justness of the law as well as the guilt or innocence of the person being charged with a crime. Well, you won't find many judges today that instruct a jury that way. The judge is going to sit up there and it's going to tell the jury, hey, I'm going to tell you what the law is, and you have to judge the guilt or innocence of the accused based on what I say is the law, right?
And we really need to understand fully informed juries would reject that and say, wait a minute, we're the people, we're the last line of defense, we're here to judge the law as well as the crime supposedly committed. So, for example, if I believe that, yes, the crime was committed, they would make me believe that I've got to convict then. I would come back and say, yeah, but let's say that they violated the IRS, and I believe the IRS is flat out unconstitutional. Then I wouldn't prosecute. I would say no, because the law is worse than the crime committed, and therefore I would say no. In modern day, that would not be acceptable, but the reality is fully informed juries and jurors that understand this truth would double down and do this, and it would basically take the power away from these judges if people truly understood what a fully informed jury was. I don't mean to go off forever on this, Lowell, but I really think it's important to lay that out.
Well, and I'll go one more here and say that if you're ever called to jury selection and you understand fully informed juries, you need to be discreet about that. You don't let on. You don't want the you don't want the prosecutors, you don't want the attorneys, and you don't want the judge to know that you know about a fully informed jury. If you're going to decide a case and the law is unconstitutional, then you want to get on that jury because you want to declare that person not guilty of an unjust law. And so, but in order to do that, you'll be dismissed if you start talking about fully informed jury during voir dire, what do they call it? Anyway, when they start questioning potential jury members about their associations with the accused and whether they know the accused and whether they know the law and whether they know anything about fully informed juries, you have to kind of play dumb in order to get past that questioning so that you can be on the jury and actually, deal justice in the matter, as opposed to, just going along with the judge and being, being basically rubber stamping their efforts to condemn the accused. So I know it's kind of kind of dicey what I just said there, but if you want to see the justice done, you need to be able to be a member of that jury. Then that's kind of what you have to do to get on. Sam?
The good news is that we, the people, can learn about this, can understand, can get involved, and can make a difference. Again, if you say that you're a fully informed juror, you start talking to other jury members about that, they'll flat out kick you off the jury. So hold it in private, understand who you are and what you're doing, and the law is on your side, and basically adjudicate appropriately. In other words, hey, even if somebody's committed a crime, if you say two things: one, I believe the penalty will be way extreme per the crime, or two, I believe the law is unconstitutional in the first place, like the IRS is a great example, then you've got to say no in both cases and let the person walk. Again, I know people are like, well, I can't do that. Yeah, you can, and you need to if you understand the proper role of a fully informed jury. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to put the general government back into its constitutional cage. We need public servants in our state, local, to assert their sovereignty and to reject this agenda that seems to be going on here everywhere. All right, leftists want to abolish the family, so they're attacking the rule of law and they're attacking the family law.
Well, this article has really astonished me, Sam, to read what's happening, and I'm talking about the Democratic Socialists of America, right? The DSA, and I'd never heard of these guys before. The Democrat Socialists of America, in early July of this year, like just last month, right? It's August, July, August. Just last month, they sponsored a panel on the family at their Socialism Conference 2025. Now, I've never been invited to a socialism conference, and I would never go, probably, but their topic was this: how should the left relate to the family? Socialist analysis makes clear that the nuclear family form is an inherently repressive, racist, and heterosexist institution that functionally reinforces and reproduces capitalism. End of quote. That was their topic at the conference, okay? Now, right away, this is getting pretty low, but here are a couple of key observations from panelists. And these panelists at this conference were mostly professors at a variety of universities. And basically, it strikes me as being very typical of professors at universities. From what I've learned, most universities are not the place to go if you want to learn about liberty. I mean, you stay away from those things. But here's some observations. Quote, when we talk about family abolition, we're talking about the abolition of the economic unit, all our material needs taken care of by the collective. Another quote is, quote, we argue for the abolition of the family in general. The institution of the family acts as part of the carceral system, end quote. Now, I had to look at that word up, carceral. I didn't know what it meant. Carceral relates to prison. And so what the panelist is suggesting here is that the family is part of the prison system in which we live. Man alive, I can't believe that they're talking about the family this way, but that's exactly what they're doing.
Well, if you're godless and you support the Communist Manifesto and you believe the government's greater than God and stuff like that, then naturally they would think that way. The job for us is to expose their viewpoint and say, wait, that's not the way we believe. That's not the way America is positioned, and that's certainly not the way God and the God-ordained fundamental family really is. The family is the fundamental unit of society, not government. And that's the big thing, is we have families ordained by, under the direction of, granted sovereignty by God Almighty, not government, Lowell.
Boy, howdy thou. That's so true, Sam. Now, another disturbing element of opposition to the family comes from the left's bizarre preoccupation with the idea of making sex into a commodity, or what they call the, quote, commodifying of sex, end quote. Well, here, Ryan McMaken, who wrote this article, by the way, Ryan McMaken, and it's published at LewRockwell.com. Ryan McMaken says, quote, isn't it ironic that these anti-capitalists seek so vehemently to turn sex into an economic commodity? But this appears to be a key tenet of leftist thinking in recent decades. End of quote. In other words, they're seeking to normalize sex work or prostitution, right? They want to normalize that, make it normal. That's what we mean by normalize. Make prostitution normal part of society. After all, they reason, the family is, quote, inherently repressive, end quote, and all sex within marriage is essentially rape. It is therefore progress to abolish marital sex and to replace it with sex work.
All right, let's go ahead and skip the break and continue, Lowell. It's insane. Again, if you study the Communist Manifesto, though, everything they're saying comes straight out of that playbook. They're using different words. They're positioning it a lot softer. But the truth is that's what it's backing really is, Lowell.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so here's a couple more quotations from the Roundtable that captured this notion of sex work. Quote, sex work and marriage cannot exist without each other. They're two sides of the same coin. Ha! End of quote. Next quote. The only real difference between marriage and prostitution is the price and the duration of the contract. End quote. Man, these clowns really do not understand the marvelous blessings of family, Sam. They believe that the rearing of children ought to be managed and controlled by the state, and it is crazy. Well, another presenter at the conference promoted surrogacy as a helpful tool, quote, in breaking the biological bond between parents and children and destroying traditional notions of gender and family, end quote. Wow, that's the blessing of surrogacy, right? The left believes the family must be placed entirely under the control of the state, and their hatred of the family stems from the fact that the family is an obstacle to full state power, right? So, Sam, this reminds me of the first item on Ezra Taft Benson's list of suggestions for preserving and reclaiming liberty. His number one suggestion is quote, raise a righteous family, end quote. And we had no idea back then how important the family is and would be in the sacred cause of liberty. Well, Tocqueville admired the family, and it's what he said about the family is this, quote, as long as family feeling was kept alive, the antagonist of oppression was never alone. He looked about him and found his clients, his hereditary friends, and his kinsfolk. If this support was wanting, he was sustained by his ancestors and animated by his posterity. End of quote. Well, without the family, folks, opposition to state tyranny is simply not effective. But this is what the left wants for us. Quote, the reduction of individuals to impotent, isolated units who interact primarily with state agents is the ultimate outcome of the left's efforts, regardless of what its stated goals may be. Instead of independent family groups bonded by biology and ancient natural modes of human affection and loyalty, we are instead to have as the norm state-regulated sex workers and state-apportioned children conceived by in vitro fertilization and grown in surrogate wombs. This, the left tells us, will free us from the slavery of marriage and family and replace capitalism with the freedom to be utterly alone, atomistic, and without social or economic bonds outside the state. End of quote. Well, sounds like a horrible fate to me, Sam. I am simply not interested in this kind of freedom for my family. You know, I do what I do because of my family.
Amen to that. And I think that's where real honorable men, real true men, stand. You know, they want this feminine man on one side and this over masculine man on the other side. You know, it's either a wimp or an alpha male. And the truth is, most of us are somewhere in between. Standing on the principles of morality is what, in my humble opinion, turn you into a real man. I look towards the family, a proclamation to the world that was put out by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, churchofjesuschrist.org if you want to read it. But it about 30 years ago laid out this reality check about, hey, what is acceptable and what the traditional fundamental family looks like and all that kind of stuff, Lowell.
Absolutely, Sam. And here are several parts from that proclamation. And as I read these, you can contrast the position of the leftists with this position here in the proclamation. They are polar opposites. I'm telling you, polar opposites. So here's from the proclamation, quote, "Marriage between a man and a woman is ordained of God, and the family is central to the Creator's plan for the eternal destiny of His children. Husband and wife have a solemn responsibility to love and care for each other and for their children. Children are an heritage of the Lord," says Psalm 127, verse 3. "Parents have a sacred duty to rear their children in love and righteousness, to provide for their physical and spiritual needs, and to teach them to love and serve one another, observe the commandments of God, and be law-abiding citizens wherever they live. The family is ordained of God. Marriage between man and woman is essential to His eternal plan. Children are entitled to birth within the bonds of matrimony and to be reared by a father and a mother who honor marital vows with complete fidelity. Happiness in family life is most likely to be achieved when founded upon the teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ. Successful marriages and families are established and maintained on principles of faith, prayer, repentance, forgiveness, respect, love, compassion, work, and wholesome recreational activities. By divine design, fathers are to preside over their families in love and righteousness, and are responsible to provide the necessities of life and protection for their families. Mothers are primarily responsible for the nurture of their children. In these sacred responsibilities, fathers and mothers are obligated to help one another as equal partners. Disability, death, or other circumstances may necessitate individual adaptation. Extended families should lend support when needed." End of quote. Well, Sam, this proclamation concludes with this important counsel, quote, "We call upon responsible citizens and officers of government everywhere to promote those measures designed to maintain and strengthen the family as the fundamental unit of society." End quote. Well,
And speaking of family, the fundamental unit of society, Lowell, that's the best place to learn morality. It's the best place to learn preparedness. It's the best place, really, to do just about everything under the sun. That's why God put parents in charge of children and ordained the family, right?
Yeah, and I remember as a merit badge counselor for citizenship in the community of talking to these young Boy Scouts about the importance of civic responsibility and civic function, you know, because we would talk about the things that a city has to pay for, like police and emergency services. Well, police and emergency services makes up 20%. That's a fifth of Highland City's budget. When I was talking to them about the Highland City budget, and I asked them, what could you do to make sure that this number always stays low and doesn't go up? And of course, you know, some knew the answer and some didn't know the answer. But the answer is, don't be a criminal. Don't engage in criminal mischief. You know, don't make trouble, you know, for the city. Right? That way they can keep a police force that's small and they don't have to worry about criminal mischief. Well, where do you learn morality? You learn it in the family. That's where you learn to obey laws and to be a respectful citizen and respect the property rights of others. You don't engage in criminal mischief if you learn in your family how to behave, right? You're exactly right, Sam. That is where morality can most effectively be taught and learned, is right there in the home with family. I totally agree.
One of the things we need to learn is preparedness too, Lowell. This is critical in today's society, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is, and preparedness involves money-saving tips from the Great Depression. This comes from a blog, a prepper's blog, and everyone likes to save money. And by the way, you don't have to wait until a depression falls upon the country in order to practice these money-saving tips. You know, my parents lived through the Depression in the 1930s, and so I learned many of these tips growing up. In fact, I practice many of them today. But they're worth repeating today, especially for those in our audience who have never known scarcity. And so if you think everything's fine, if you've never known scarcity, if you've never gone without a meal, then you need to listen up, right? And these tips might be very helpful to you even now today. So live as a family. That's the first tip. Today's world encourages young adults to move out as soon as possible, but that isn't the best way to save money. Living under one roof cuts down the cost of rent, utilities, food, travel, and more. Insulate your home. This keeps the house cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. I mean, I remember newspapers lining the roof of our attic, by the way, as a kid. How about wet sheets over entryways in the summer? The water evaporates during the day, and in doing so, cools the air inside the house. I'm here to tell you, Sam, we have a swamp cooler in our home, and it works so well that I often don a sweater in the summertime just to stay comfortable because the house can get so cold. And other people, you know, they don't have as much meat on their bones as no, they have more meat on their bones than I do on mine, and so sometimes I'll just put on a sweater even in the heat of the summertime because our swamp cooler works so well. And by the way, it doesn't cost much. My bill is like $50 or $60 a month for electricity, and I know that if you have AC in your home, you're paying $200 or $300 just to pay for that AC, and so you might consider a swamp cooler as a welcome alternative. Buy produce that is close to spoiling. During the Depression, stores were closed on Sunday, and the produce being sold would spoil in the following week, and so vendors would drop their prices on Saturday evenings in an attempt to offload all their produce before it went bad. Well, talk to your local grocer. He might be doing the very same thing. And then you can sneak in there on a Saturday night and purchase that produce, which is going to spoil over the weekend, and you'll be sitting pretty with a lot of really good produce. I like produce that's ripe, and by the way, anyway, because it's more healthful, and it tastes better. It's sweeter just when it's ripe. You don't want to get green stuff. You want to get ripe produce and then eat it soon. Create your own cleaning supplies. Here's another tip. Hot water and vinegar works great for almost every cleaning job you have in the home. Grow a garden. Gardening is a less expensive way to grow your produce, and it's better for you. Besides, you know what you're eating when you pick a carrot out of your own garden and you don't buy it from the store. Make more soups. Cut milk with water, meaning blend water with the milk that you drink, and it goes further. You can double, your milk just by blending it with water. Learn how to sew. That's a very important thing. Learn how to do basic home repairs. And so these are just a few of the excellent suggestions, money-saving tips from the Great Depression, and tips well worth following today. Sam?
All I can say is this. I went to that blog. It's brilliant. It's got just tremendous preparedness ideas. Not only is there that blog, I am involved in creating a website, too, called PrepStartsNow.com. And PrepStartsNow.com sells products, but it also has all kinds of preparedness guides. For my church, I'm considered the emergency preparedness expert. That's my responsibility. So all I'm telling you is there's things that we can do as a family that really bring people closer together, that help this fundamental unit of society with unity, with service, with love, with kindness. And yes, the father is the head of the household in God's law, but that doesn't mean he's a dictator. It means he's a servant. He's there to serve everyone around him and lead with patience, kindness, love, and honor. One of the most important things a dad can do for his children is to love their mother. For Lowell Nelson, campaignforliberty.org, and yours truly, syndicated by lovingliberty.net. Download the iPhone app or the Android app, or simply listen online at lovingliberty.net. We the people can make a difference. The family is the fundamental unit of society. God save the Republic of the United States of America.